Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are joined by our professional of the year, our honorable doctor and friend, Grand Venerable, joining the show here, and he always has some insight on the way of the world. I mean, with his extreme, vast knowledge as a doctor and all that he's done. And again, ArtMolecular Concepts is the name of his company. He's a publisher, author, molecular expression artist. I can't even explain to you all the things that he does and has done as in life, and he still continues to work. And don't you play the piano too? Yeah, he does a lot. So Grant, please welcome yourself to the show. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. This may be one of my better talks because it's so unorganized. And that's how I liked to do my classes. I don't try to be organized, but what I do is use a methodology called multiple processing of the subject matter I'm dealing with. I'm working on like one universal idea at a time, but I get a lot of topics that flow from that one idea. So that the big topics I'm thinking of right now are artificial intelligence. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Where did
Oh
my
no.
screen go?
I see you though. I still see you.
Jeez.
I still see you 100%, sweetheart. I
You
guess
can see me.
I see you and I see
can't
me. So we're
see
both on the
you.
same. Yeah. Good, good, good.
Okay. Well, the main topic, I want to get back to a number of topics that we've covered over recent weeks. And one is artificial intelligence, and another is image and branding. I've talked about clothing labels, but I use that term metaphorically. And clothing labels is what sells things that many people have to sell. And when those people are people in the business world and the political world and even the academic world, those can be very interesting, how those are set up. One is another universal is talking about the village. The family is a village. It takes a village to raise a child. So that topic has to do with the subject of my memoir. The memoir is entitled Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown.
Right.
And the subtitle is Art, Science, Oracles, and Kinfolk.
Ooh,
And the
kinfolk.
book is packed with all kinds of stories around those headings. The important thing to realize that all of those headings are related by one or two universal ideas. I want to get at those a little bit more on this go around today, including the State of the Union. And also this idea that has been not just floating, but it's been a part of our culture in America and Europe. And it's a thing that ruminates about why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? And it's worded in various ways, but that's the gist of it. And it's one I've wondered about more lately as what I've figured out tends to make more sense now. And that's where that thought came up around the Nazis' Holocaust, in which it killed millions of European Jewish people and other people that were minority groups in Germany. during World War II and even before the World War began. And I have an answer to that, but it's part of a larger issue that has to do with my memoir, my 4 books packed in one, 4 volumes. And it comes to a conclusion in the volume 4, where I deal directly, I deal head on with that idea, mainly with, well, is there a God? What is God, if there is? And what does it all mean? And that's when, just of late, I've realized that the God idea is something that humans, in their creative intelligence, have devised. Every one of the 8 billion plus humans on planet Earth have different ideas about that. Some have created, I'm going to put it like that, they've created a God in their own minds that, and it behaves in one way or another way or another way or another way. And the God force, or I'll just call it the creator, that I have been reflecting on more in the last few months since I've been in the desert, uh, is one that places all of the responsibility for my life on my own personal decisions about life and myself, enabling me to ask friends the question, do you trust life? And Jill, you and I have uh, talked about that a few times, but it comes up again. It comes up with the language of labels, uh, the the thing about being our responsibility. That's a hard one for many people to swallow until they've been around life long enough to see that there are patterns in the way different people conduct and experience their lives. And as I've seen how I conduct my own life, I begin to see my own patterns and I say, oh, I see where that comes from because I keep making choice A or choice B or choice D. And the memoir is rife with examples of that kind of experience and how one person, namely myself and many of my colleagues, my teachers, my friends, operate their lives. One thing that people like us notice is in the quality and longevity of life. Well, the scriptures have something to say about that, namely that if you conduct your life in a good way, that in which you love your neighbor, whatever that means to you, then you'll probably have long life. So those are all of the morsels that I'm putting on the plate for this uh, verbal feast. Let me go to, I want to read this section from volume 1 of my memoir, and it's from the introduction, and it talks about, in this part, wholeness and brain waves, a whole brain and its brain waves. And it describes Jubal, a whole as an entity made up of 3 parts or 3 halves, as my mentor used to refer to it. Terry was a mathematics teacher, very advanced mathematics, taught at the high school level, and got kids ready for college calculus even when they left the 11th grade to go to UC Berkeley or UCLA. But the 2 halves that Terry talks about in her whole, which has a name, the name is Jubal. Jubal's two halves are kept separate from one another, even while they are kept joined one to the other by the third half. Well, that's an oxymoron. How do you have three halves in a whole? You have to enter into a different holistic reality. It's what we might even call a non-Euclidean geometric reality, in which three ones add up to the great universal one. Now, to go further, the third half of this whole, if you can imagine a yin yang symbol with a circle around it, uh, the third half between the first two halves is virtually invisible. It is called the interface. This kind of quantum whole reality is mind-boggling to the usual Western way of thinking, which views all of reality through the lens of an either-or dual consciousness. This subject-object split consciousness has been the playing field of the mind-body problem since philosopher René Descartes, born 1596, died 1650, ever since he proclaimed, "I think, therefore I am." And yet Descartes was not entirely an absolute either-or dualist. Well, Jubal, back to the chapter here, symbolizes a both and unified consciousness, as unified as you can be with a both and kind of reality instead of a either or. Um, but Jubal symbolizes this both and, as do the arts and sciences. It is reminiscent of ancient Dravidic, African, and Asian yin yang, pagan cultural outlooks. Jubal also points to the possibility of wandering into altered states of consciousness, including unified whole consciousness. Such wanderings may occur in deep meditation, hypnotic trance, and inadvertent shifts in the body's own neurochemical balance. But shifts may occur through time crossings with art, music, and dance experience, yoga, marathon exercising like running, swimming, walking, or crystal phenomena, or the intended ingestion of natural plant substances long known to shamans in indigenous cultures. These different access channels to inner world wanderings are capable of shifting one's brain frequency from the normal reality of the awake, logical, empirical beta state of consciousness. And that's at about 14 to 40 cycles per second frequency. Cycle per second has a name. It's called Hertz, named after the physicist Gerhard Hertz. And it's from those states that you get to deeper states. Descartes would have been enthralled by modern neuroscience. The alpha state is that vibrational state between 7.5 to 14 hertz. The beta state, which is the highest frequency, is 14 to 40 hertz. But the alpha state, 7.5 to 14, is associated with successful closed eye meditation, prayer, and deep relaxation as the gateway to the subconscious mind. But it's only the gateway. Intuition is heightened here as the brainwave frequency gets slower and slower down to 7.5 cycles per second. The theta state, with its lower frequency range from 4 to 7.5 hertz, is associated with deep meditation, light sleep, and the REM, namely the rapid eye movement of the dream state. There's the eyes under the eyelids, and the eye is moving, and you can see the eyelids responding to the eyeballs movement. But of course, you can't see yourself, but if someone were studying you, they would see that. Now, this subconscious region is experienced in daily life, the theta state, only briefly, as we pass into nightly sleep from alpha to theta, and while awakening from deep sleep in a still lower state called delta, DELTA, delta. In deepest dreamless sleep, brain rhythms descend below 4.0 hertz to as low as 1/2 hertz. Here, the self, yourself, enters the realm of the fully detached non-awareness of the unconscious. It really gets weird at that point, but most people go through that delta briefly during nighttime sleep and briefly in awakening from the delta state into the hypnagogic state, which comes between deep sleep and fully awake. So this part I'm talking about now, we're talking about something I went through and didn't realize I was going through it. It's about 2 weeks ago. But the delta is the gateway to what the social scientists call the universal mind and the collective unconscious, where healing is stimulated as well as an ability to know things normally unknowable to the conscious intellect of the beta state. That's where we are right now. We're in beta state. I have personally experienced anesthesia during outpatient patient procedures, while later realizing that my brain was flipping between theta and delta states as I slept on the operating table. Any sense of time collapsed as my trace awareness traveled between complete detachment and subliminally seeing my surroundings and hearing everything the surgical team was saying. In this kind of experience, I'm close to Jubal, that my mentor Terry introduced to her students. Jubal is the unifying interface between separate, seemingly dissimilar realms, between the technological beta realm, where we live most of our lives, and the artful intuitive of the alpha, and then more deeply in the theta, and deep, deep, deep in the delta realms. Jubal is also the interface between everyday normal moments and transcendent, what we call spiritual experience, between that which is fragmental and compartmentalized and that which is unified, between the visible secular and the invisible divine, and between the empirical scientific and the hidden sacred. This is truly an appropriate function for Jubal, the algebraic entity given given Jubal's important role in Old Testament tradition as the father of art, and all who play stringed instruments, as the Old Testament tells us, as the harp and the flute. As such, Jubal provides a dynamic interface between enabling the harp and the flute to be played together at the same time through a little mouth instrument we call a harmonica today. And each little hole in the where you blow air through is tuned to a different kind of instrumental voice, either the harp or the string instrument. Now, those are tools to get through my memoir. And those are tools I reached for the first time in a big way after I had one of the strangest moments I may have had in my existence. I think it was about 2 weeks ago here in the desert. I'm I'm in there's a lot of towns with Palm in the name, and we're 2,000 feet above Palm Springs, which is uh, south of the Joshua Tree Monument from where I live. And I live right near these beautiful, unusual looking mountains uh, that are the Joshua Tree Monument. I got out of the swimming pool at my complex. And as I indicated in some of the experiences that can flip you into different brain states, I had forgotten I was referring to my own experiences like swimming because I get in and I do laps. I'm not trying to set any speed records, but just that repetitive motion and
Mm-hmm.
relaxing in the embrace of the water around my body and all of the limbs of my body and getting me in a relaxed. I'm probably between alpha and theta just being in the water. Then I got out, and that particular date, it was on a Saturday, I believe, a couple of weeks ago. And it was the first really cool day at the
Ah.
end of a long summer here in the upper desert.
Mhm.
And so the air was cool. I mean this relatively because it was about 72. The water's about 78. So I felt warmer in the water than in the air. So the air felt chilly to me, and my body was starting to chill quickly.
Mhm.
And I grabbed the towel to start to dry myself out so my body could warm up and not be chilled by the air. Again, forgetting what I myself had written in this introduction to the memoir in volume one. And I attempted to speak to my friend, the lifeguard, whose native land is Italy. And that's where he got his college degrees. And he's going to be earning those same degrees again in English speaking universities in California. We've had some deep conversations. And I was attempting to describe what happened around the death of a week ago before that of one of my contemporary cousins. Well, that's culturally significant, so I'll say it. These were cousins in a way I grew up with,
Mhm.
not as a child, but as a young 20-ish young man. And this young man named, his name was Walter, is the eldest child of his family, and the youngest was maybe about 11 years younger. So, but being close to them in the late 1960s, during my graduate studies at the University of Chicago, which was only a mile from their home in Hyde Park, we got to know one another like we were brother, and they were my three brothers and one sister. So we were as close as many siblings and many first cousins are.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, when he passed,
Uh,
from medical reasons are given always for that. They're not always the true reasons, but nonetheless, he did have a cancer that came over him very quickly. And yes, it has a name, and that's not what is important. What was important was my finally realizing I was going through this moment at the time. I figure through I'll put it my spiritual experience in growing up, that we had a belief, in fact, a knowledge in my family that loved ones who are passing, going through the passage to the other side, are able to reach us in a communicative way. You never know how. But what I concluded finally, oh, my cousin was actually reaching out to me
Mm-hmm.
before his soul drifted too far out of our earthly environment and wherever he was going in the big cosmos. And it perturbed my brain rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
By that I mean it shook them in this moment of vulnerability, getting out of the water and the sky being beautiful towards sunset, that I
Of
flipped.
course.
I flipped into Delta, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't express that to my friend.
Wow.
Uh,
No.
all I knew was my words were babble, just like when the tribal people, a lot of tribal peoples, were building the Tower of Babel, and they're walking up this tower to reach heaven, and they could never build fast enough or high enough to get there. So everything coming out of my mouth was babble. What, what I was trying to tell my
Yeah.
friend is that the reason that I even know this cousin came about from something that happened back in
Mm-hmm.
1947 when my mother and this cousin's mother met for the first time in Portland, Maine. And the backstory is even interesting, which also contributed to my brainwave shift. Namely, my mother at age 30
Yeah.
went back to Portland, Maine to be present for the birth of her niece's
Oh.
first child,
Mm-hmm.
Stanley, who was born at the Naval Hospital in Portland, Maine, because his father was in the Navy. And trying to describe that, that my mother had been elected by the family to represent Marjorie's mother, who would be the grandchild of this newborn. But she was ill at the time and could not make that trip, and mother was elected to do it. So she did what you did in those days. She bought the ticket on the fastest train that you could get
Mm-hmm.
there, the Super Chief on the Santa Fe Railroad, and then the New York Central Railroad, the 20th Century Limited. We don't hear those names anymore, but those were primary travels, ways of traveling. So she got there. She was there a few days, however long it took to midwife the baby. Then she came back through Chicago and she stopped a few days to see her cousin Cleo. Cousin Cleo was her eldest first cousin, 21 years older than my mother Thelma. Well, Cleo and her husband, Charles, only lived a few houses from their daughter and the daughter's husband. The husband was a Tuskegee Airman. This occurred in their first child, little Walter, was born in Tuskegee, Alabama as a result. So that was an adventure in itself. So when my mother first met Marion, who was my second cousin, my mother's first cousin once removed, if you keep up with those technical terminologies,
Yeah.
she took one look
Mm.
at the baby. No, she took one look at Marion's older child, who was by then 2 years and 2 months of age, and old enough to look enough like me that she said, she just exalted and said, "Oh, he looks like my little Grant." And the whole family was lifted up by that realization. Well, I was trying to explain all that to my lifeguard friend, and I couldn't even put words together to think of
Mm-hmm.
the right word. I felt
Yeah.
embarrassed I said, "What's going on with
I
me?"
get
I
it.
said to my friend, "You must think I'm crazy."
Yeah.
Well, in a larger sense, I was crazy because anyone that goes through a delta flip gets into such an unusual moment, they cannot explain it with logical, rational words. And it took me 4 days to figure it out before the inner voice said, reach for your volume 1 introduction on brainwaves. And there it was, which I just read to our audience about what happens when the ego completely detaches from the mind and the body. And when that happens, you have no fear of anything. You don't care what anyone thinks about what is going on or what you're doing or what you're saying. And that's what happened to me. All care went away when
Mm,
I was in that moment. But it was strangely pleasant anyway. So that's where we start the moment here today, because that's has happened to
mm.
so many of our listeners already. It's happened.
Yeah.
But people may not realize that's what was happening. Because when the person or the body goes
Yeah.
from mortal existence into the celestial zone, which some of us call heaven, uh, the ego drops away. It dissolves. The ego's no longer there. There's no ego. It's all mind, soul, and heart.
Yeah.
And whatever happens from that is what happens.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump down to
Sure. Go
artificial
ahead.
intelligence.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, isn't that a nice thing to shift to
Oh,
after
yeah.
delta waves? Because that's one thing artificial intelligence cannot offer you.
Right.
They cannot program that for you to detach from your ego. The ego is that which tells you who you think you are or want to be, but who you really are is even deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it has other names like the inner self. So I was talking to a teacher I met up with in a festival here in the valley just last weekend about who's a former teacher, and we talked about the what's happened to the classroom today and when did it happen? Why did it happen? And the classroom is not what I experienced as a grade schooler or a high schooler in the 1950s. So what happened? And we gave that some talk. The only fundamental thing that happened is that knowledge of the Delta realm was missing in action, but it was always there before in the public schools or the private schools. It was there. That learning, which is the deepest possible learning, and theta rhythms. You can't learn deeply without engaging theta and delta. And I'm realizing now my learning of science was grounded in a number of sources, which added up to being spending a lot of time in my brain's delta state and theta state, and some of the time in the alpha state. Uh, when one goes to their house of worship and prays, if they're fortunate, they get into the alpha state. It's a very relaxing state for the brain, so the brain can focus on things it doesn't otherwise focus on. But
Yeah.
that's the deal with artificial intelligence. Those who worry profoundly that it's going to wreck the classroom do not grapple with
Yeah.
the whole brain frequency idea, because it's going to be a long time, if ever, before a human
Mm-hmm.
being can program a software where the artificial intelligence
And wow.
can perform in the theta and the delta states.
Wow.
So, so teachers have no fear with
Ooh.
students uh,
Nope,
What do you
not at
say?
all.
Plagiarizing information for an essay. And that's why I tell teachers, don't worry about it. Let them use it.
Mm-hmm.
Just change the kind of assignment you get. If there's an
Mm-hmm.
exam involved, just say, okay, folks, kids, use AI as much as you want. However, the last question on this test is to explain how and why you used AI.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it work for you? Tell
Right.
me about the AI itself that allowed it to do what it did for you. So a little creativity solves those kinds of problems. So you may
Interesting.
want to make an announcement if anyone wants to call in, because
Yes, the lines are open
that
631 307 4010. That's 631 307 4010. If you have any questions. And speaking of AI, this is getting just, oh, it's so baffling to me. I just have to ask because I feel like so many things I'm seeing now, I don't know if it's real or not. And a lot of that's on social media that my kids are seeing, right? And then I heard about something in the news the other day about how there's this new AI actress, and the union SAG and AFTRA are horrified. Now, some of their work is going to go to an AI character instead of a real actress who could do the job even better and, right, no takes, like, could do it perfect every time. This is affecting everything. I just can't imagine going to a movie theater and it's not a real actress, but this is what people are talking about. Like, what's next? It's going to be taking away so many jobs, right?
well, that's one fear,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only a fear when one is not using their own creative resources, their creative mind, which is what I had to do, which I shared over a previous podcast on when I lost a position teaching on a job. It was a wonderful position in a wonderful university. But what that did is it forced me to access more deeply in my theta and delta mind states, even though I was unhappy with losing the job and good colleagues. But I got more from not staying there that enabled me to access Silicon Valley industry. Well, what if I had gone into an excuse like, well, I'm trained in chemistry. What do I know about computer science or computer engineering or how to make microchips? And no, I picked up everything creative I had been taught or taught myself in chemistry and applied it to computer and software manufacturing. Of course, all those corporations, most of them were in what we call Silicon Valley between the
Mm-hmm.
Santa Cruz Mountains and San Jose and San Francisco and San Rafael to the north. And that's where I had the privilege of working with a vice president and his staff, in which I was welcomed to use my creative artistic mind,
Mm-hmm.
which I had used to explain chemistry by urging students to draw pictures of chemical principles instead of just writing down the words that explain the principles. And that's what I did. I was a communication interface between the people, the men and women who were actually designing the hardware equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and the market people who had to go sell the equipment and the software once it was available as a product. And that's in my book, how I did that, how the workshops ran that where I worked with these two different staffs, got to know their characteristics, got to see when I poured all of my
Yeah.
tools of my trade on the big seminar table that, 20 people are sitting around, and dumped everything in the boxes, the containers that I brought in. And most of what I brought were wood play blocks of different geometric shapes that would delight any 5-year-old, plus colored crayons and paper, and a big kettle of Legos. Just
Wow.
dumped them on the table.
Yeah.
Well, I was really being okay. Let's see what happens. The engineers that made the equipment and the software could not wait to get their hands on all of those pieces of toys, all of those block toys. And the market people sat back, kind of transfixed about, well, let's watch. What can we do with that? But so they
Yeah.
sat back. But the engineers, with their creative core minds, jumped in and started building little structures. And I said, okay, now you're getting ahead of where we're going to go here. I said,
Yeah.
now I want you to set your structures aside and come up with a different structure that represents the module that you're working on this software system that you're creating for this company. And they did. And when they had done that, I asked for testimonials as to, okay, what do all of these parts mean in your structure? And then I asked, what other structure in this around the table do you talk to when you make your final system? Now that's where the rubber hit the road, because different little submodules on your structure had a need to communicate to a little module, submodule on somebody else's structure until you had all these cross-linking communication channels set up there. I think you see what I mean.
Yeah, sure do.
All these interlinking connections, patterns,
Oh,
and it caused so much inspiration around the table. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. And they could talk more verbally with each other in terms of what they needed from three or four other people around the table. I said, well, this is great. This is the best of the academic world being created and the best of the Silicon Valley industrial world. So all that was coming out as we speak of the language of clothing labels. And what really the metaphor is that a label is a way of branding the clothing product. Well,
mm-hmm.
industry today markets a lot of labels that are metaphors. They're not real clothing labels. But in the process, since the 1980s, corporate people have lost sight of
So
the
true.
metaphors that
So true. Yeah.
the that the marketing labels aren't real. They're not, they're something they work with in the marketplace, but they're not real
Got
because
it.
they're not substance.
True.
But you
Yeah.
need that substance
Mm-hmm.
to really make your product work,
Yeah.
to advertise it to the marketplace. Now, that's
Mm.
that's really my story today. And
And
and it's a matter of now where can we go from here?
well,
Because
unfortunately, no callers yet. 631-307-4010. But in the meantime, we don't need callers. We could still chat. And
oh sure. Yeah.
we could
Oh
talk
yeah.
about anything, including world
That
peace. We could
that's
talk
right.
politics. We could talk the release of the hostages. But in all honesty, you're
Um,
a man of many.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's great news. There's a lot of good news going on in the world right now. And
Yeah,
such positive stuff, I believe. And
that's right.
I hope
And
it stays that way, right?
well, it's as people get over fear, the news gets better.
Yeah.
Even though the events are still the same, when one comes at them without fear, everything changes. Everything changes for good.
Aw. Yeah, I agree. And, Here we are. You are in California. I'm here in New York. No matter
Uh,
where you are in the world, I just feel like everyone, we are connected. I just wonder what's next. I just hope there's no more COVID, no more pandemics, no more like this, and less war. I'm excited about that. And I just wish everyone could just take a moment to breathe, to meditate, to really focus and
yeah.
wake up with a positive mindset every day. I mean, what do you do to wake up, to meditate, or to get yourself focused for the day?
Well,
Just curious.
one thing is I use small affirmations that I
Mm-hmm.
learned as a child from my aunt and my father and other elders in the family. And they and applications from everything from going somewhere in an automobile to telling my aunt that I'm having problems breathing today. My allergies are coming on me, and she was a very religious woman, and I respected her deeply, particularly
Mm-hmm.
because she could tell me many things,
Yeah.
and she'd tell me I would believe it as a child, and I kept believing it
Yeah.
ever since. She said, she says, now, honey, just say the words, God breathes through me. I am strong and free.
Yeah.
And I'd repeat it, and I'd fall asleep. My breathing would be clear by morning. It seems a small thing,
Yeah.
but it's a big thing.
Absolutely.
It means certain things that elders knew. They just knew. They didn't have to explain it using the laws of physics or philosophy or political science. And see, there was another one I was thinking about. Anyway, they're called affirmations
Mm-hmm.
to affirm your wellness, affirm being well in this beautiful universe in which we live, and not buying into doubts and fears.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, you're focused on assurances and things being right.
Yeah. I
It's an amazing thing.
oh,
The the young, I'm also aware of connections in this universe, and the story I related about my mom, Thelma, going on the train to Portland, Maine, to midwife the birth of her little uh,
mm-hmm.
nephew, Stanley. There was a little kind of another one of those cosmic connections.
Mm-hmm.
The Stanley passed away
Aw.
just a couple of weeks
Yeah.
before my cousin passed away. They were
Ah.
about the same age.
Mm-hmm.
So Stanley was born in 47
Ah, yep.
and Walter was 2 years old in 47. But there
Mm-hmm.
was this unmistakable connection in the events of their birth and their passing for both of them. And these were different families with different patriarchs. But my father and mother, their joint family is what connected those two together. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, all is well. I'm in this universe of what we can call spiritual connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that, there's so much of that today, and I feel like we're all connected, and I love life. Fall's the best season for me. I just feel more rejuvenated than anything, and I hope our listeners out there feel the same. And if you don't feel the same, a lot of us, are struggling with certain things, mental illness, depression, anxiety. You got to reach out for help. right? You might
Yeah.
not have a friend. You
Yeah.
might need someone. And it's always sad if you don't have a family member or a friend. But I know I'm a good friend. Dr. Grant Venerable's a good friend. Reach out to us.
Yes.
631-307-4010. We're almost out of time, but say hi.
Right.
Ah.
S- I know when I had students in my classes, uh, most of my time, my ideas get so deep and out there. The students just sit there staring. This is amazing. What does he really
Mhm.
say? And
Yeah.
then they'll start to ask me after class, well, what
Yeah.
did you mean by this, and that? And then the conversations really develop. Like students that
Hmm.
at the end of the quarter would ask, in their evaluation of the class, said, well, this very interesting thing happened. I came here to learn chemistry, which I learned, but it also strengthened my spiritual faith.
Hmm.
And they would come to my office and tell me that. I said, I did? That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. And now I understand why better than I did then, because I've been around so much longer, and
Yeah.
there's certain words that you can put out, and they translate to the human mind on a different level than just the level, say, of materialistic chemistry.
Well, thank you so much for today. Grant, how do we contact you, please?
Uh, well, I have two email addresses. Right now, one is Ventwo, VENTWO at AOL.com. And one I'm breaking in is VenMatrix, VENMATRIX, VenMatrix at Outlook.com, Outlook.com. And then my web address is Grant D. Venerable, PhD, all lowercase, .com, or there may not be a Grant D. It might just be Grant Venerable, PhD. I haven't looked at it in a few days, so it has
All
a
right.
googolts of information.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you
Well,
here and looking forward to next week. Enjoy the rest of your day, Grant. And
thank you,
thank you for the
Jill.
conversation. Always exciting to hear you and always something new to talk about. Thank you for discussing all of this. Enjoy your
Well,
day,
it's
honey.
exciting to be here.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Jill.
being our professional of the
Okay.
year. Bye, Grant.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.